Again, I want to say thank you all for joining in. We're just going to have about 45 minutes. Looking forward to a very interactive session. So yes, I'll be making some, presentations, but at the same time, I'll be asking questions and hoping that you can also share your thoughts and insights. So I'm just going to jump into the slides and to kick off the session. All right, so the title of this webinar is Aligned Teams Don't Happen by Accident, a workshop for people managers. And as most of you know, my name is Dr. Amara Igboegwu-Okwum, and I'm the founder, CEO of Ignite to Transform. And my organization, Ignite to Transform, is really focused on supporting leaders. We really believe that it's absolutely critical that leaders are given the skill set to connect and create the kind of environment where the team members are able to function and able to really thrive. And so the idea really is to, create this kind of ecosystem where leaders can do excellently well. We have three different areas where we support leaders. One is through leadership consulting, and we do have an ecosystem of courses and coaching opportunities for leaders. And this is something that we do in-house, so we're able to connect with potential organizations already. We support organizations like UNICEF and UNOPS and the United Nations in general. And this is something that we do because we really believe that leaders need that support. Another area that we work with is facilitation and capacity building services. We provide train-the-trainer workshops. We also support with designing programs, designing curriculum from inception to implementation. And finally, something I really enjoy is team building services. And here we, curate experiences for staff. We know that the more opportunities staff members have to connect outside of work, to exchange and learn about each other a bit more, the better they work together, the more cohesive they are, the more collaborative they are as well. And so building those bonds, especially during a team building activity or event, can also be very helpful. Of course, now you're wondering, okay, so why are we here? Today, we're going to be looking at the importance of team alignment. And I do have a question I'd like to ask. So sort of a reflection, if you will. And I'll give you a moment to take a look at this and to let me know how this strikes you. So take a moment and read what you have up there, the quotation by a very famous leadership scholar, Patrick Lencioni. And I'll give a moment here for you to look through it. And so this quote says, "The fact remains that teams, because they are made up of imperfect human beings, are inherently dysfunctional." How does it strike, you all? What do you think? I mean, what comes to mind? Do you agree with this statement? I've been in a workshop where people were like, no, I don't agree with this. Do you agree with it? And if so, and what are your thoughts about this?
I may say that I agree with the quote, but it's not like something that is like we cannot change. Yes, we are imperfect, but with organization, with communication, we can create a very great place, environment to work together and to be functional.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your insight there, Zach. Oh, you're absolutely right. There's that aspect of imperfection, but then, of course, with the right tools, you can actually come out of that. Absolutely. Any other thoughts or insights?
Yeah, just to add to what she said, from my experience, I believe that teams naturally, because just like it's dysfunctional, of course, because people are coming from different backgrounds. So for me, it's people have different orientation to life, belief, religion, all these are conflicting. And, being in the workplace and having all these people together for a purpose, definitely you're going to be rubbing off on some issues. So hopefully at the end of today, we keep learning about how to overcome these challenges. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Julia. Yeah, you're absolutely right. In fact, you took the words right out of my mouth. The reality is that we are all walking around, interacting with one another with a set of lens, like a lens that we have acquired through our upbringing, our experiences, our traumas, even our cultures, right? All of these elements shape the way we see the world. So even though we hear the same information or see the same thing or whatever it is that we're looking at, or image, we interpret it based on the lens through which we come in. Now, so imagine you're leading a team of people who are coming from different backgrounds. What could potentially happen? Anyone want to share? If you're leading a team with different people with different perspectives, what are some of the things that could potentially go wrong or right? What do you think? What could potentially happen if you're leading a team of with people who are very diverse, coming from different backgrounds? We just talked about the different lenses. What do you think might happen?
So for me, what I think might happen would be misunderstanding. Sometimes when you communicate, you could be misunderstood. There could also be a feeling of, apart from being misunderstood, people could feel an unfair from what I've seen. Sometimes people actually start to merge, that is the word merge, or start to form relationships based on their common grounds. Sometimes those relationships now, but it bottles people into sections, and so stuff like that. I'm just thinking, but this is from my experience.
So you're talking about people forming cliques, right, in the workplace. Yeah, because they feel maybe more aligned, so they kind of form their little groups, and that could also lead to a toxic, very easily could spiral out into a very toxic environment. Yeah, absolutely. And I really like what you said there. Because of this, we have the likelihood of misalignment. And when we look at misalignment, can anyone share what might be a cost of it? What do you think is a cost of misalignment? We just talked about, conflict and maybe toxicity, but what else could potentially happen when a group or a team is experiencing misalignment, or even an organization is experiencing misalignment? What do you think might happen? What are some of the characteristics that we could potentially see? Anybody?
There are quite a number of things, of course, that could lead to misalignments in the team. One could be, for example, maybe a new team member joins the team and there are no clear, clarification as to what the team member's responsibility is going to look like. You don't provide the team with, the tools to work with. There is no strategy as to where is the team actually headed to. So it brings a lot of confusion in the team. And importantly, timely communicating, let me say the team's plan, it could be the weekly plan, the bi-weekly plan or monthly plan, and then possibly there are also changes that might also take place. The team lead is actually is expected to clearly and timely to the team members, just so that they know exactly where they are headed to. And importantly, again, there is also room for, innovation in situations where a team lead does not really welcome, new ideas of working. It makes it very difficult for team members to actually align with the team's general objectives, because that way now I will be forced to actually act in a certain way that most likely does not even align with my ideals, or most certainly it's not going to, make me become, instead of efficient, I tend to become, less productive and all of that, or a bit disassociated from the team. So all of that does cause a lot of misalignments within the team members. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sunny. You really painted a beautiful picture there. I was able to distill when one of the major costs of misalignment is this lack of clarity, right? When you're not aligned, then people don't know what to do. For example, if a new person comes into a team and there's no guideline, that could cause a lot of confusion and frustration, right? And also, depending on the behavior, also that could cause team members to not feel motivated, right? So when we talk about misalignment, there's just so many different ways that people could very, very much reduce productivity, because one, they have no idea what's going on. Two, they're just like, what's my business? I'm just going to get my paycheck and move along. And productivity will definitely dip, right, when that happens. Another potential cost of misalignment could be just conflicts as well, right? Julia was just mentioning about cliques. When you're not aligned, then we start having all kinds of resistance and poor behavior, and that could lead to a lot of interpersonal altercations, and of course also lead to toxicity. So there's a lot at stake. There's a lot at stake when there's misalignment. And this is why I'm really passionate about supporting managers in being able to bring a sense of alignment to the teams. And this is why I created the Align and Thrive team alignment coaching program, which does exactly that. It gives teams an opportunity to be intentional in the way they create the alignment within their teams, right? Because you're not going to just one day wake up and everybody is aligned. No, you have to be intentional, right? You have to be intentional about how you work together. So there's one thing to know exactly what each person needs to do, and it's quite another to identify how, or to determine how the team actually works together. And this is what the Align and Thrive team alignment coaching program aims to do, to support line managers to have those conversations that allow them to then co-create their team norms. Align and Thrive framework is something that I use to help support teams, right? A high functioning team is dependent on 6 pillars. One is communication. I think Sanya Lawal mentioned that, communication. So when you have good communication, you're more likely to work better together, because a lot of times most of the miscommunication starts with having assumptions and so forth. And so alignment, be aligning on how you're going to communicate, what kind of channels you need to communicate will be extremely important. Collaboration is another element, another pillar in the Align and Thrive framework, where we don't want silo working, right? So we have to be intentional about, okay, how do we actually take on tasks? Who is leading what? When something happens and somebody drops the ball, who's going to be following through? So all of these things are extremely important to lay out, because when we begin to assume, oh, maybe person A is going to do that and person B is going to do that, and you haven't had that conversation, chances are everyone is thinking, oh yeah, maybe the other person is doing the job, right? And that causes a lot of delays and frustrations as well. Decision making is also another area that a lot of people struggle, especially teams. I've been in situations where the line manager or the executive director has a particular ideology, and the others or the rest of the team are completely going the opposite direction, just because conversations were not had in terms of when does, the feedback of potential team members, when is it necessary, when is it not, right? So we try to avoid making assumptions and being very clear in terms of establishing expectations. The same thing goes for values and culture. Have you ever been in a situation where the values and culture of a team is stated in the code of conduct, yet it's not really being lived? Has anyone had that kind of experience?
Please, can you take that question again?
Has anybody been in a situation where the values and culture of the team is not really modeled at all? So people say, oh, this is what we stand for as an organization or as a team. But then when it comes to the day-to-day behaviors, it's not being mirrored. Like, has anybody been in that situation?
Yeah, I certainly have at work, where senior management or those in leadership positions are not necessarily modeling the type of behaviors that they actually want to see in either line managers or employees who have a lower band. So of course, it's important for them to be able to model that behavior as a starting point, and then the rest of the team would follow. So I think it's important to paint that picture, really. Mm-hmm. If not, everyone within the team just to do their own thing, and then there's no alignment, there's no cohesion, and then the culture is not well defined.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. You're absolutely right. A lot of times it's so easy to say, oh, trust, transparency, safety, blah, blah, blah. There are all kinds of values out there. But when it comes to the day-to-day engagement, how people are treated is quite far away from the ideal. So yeah, it's extremely important also to be very intentional about what kind of behaviors are accepted or acceptable in the team. We have to have a conversation around that. What about well-being and boundaries? Has anybody been in a team where people were burnt out and it was just really difficult, or just things did not go as planned in terms of taking into consideration how people were, the working hours, or being overworked? Has anyone been in that situation? Does anybody relate to?
I've actually been in that type of situation. It's something recently we were actually trying to address. given the fact that we work in the humanitarian space, there's this need and rush for wanting to do things urgently and all of that. And over time, in the administrative department, we usually used to have quite a number of requests. So it could be middle of the night, it could be on weekends, very unsolicited hours. You realize that we're having requests for hotel bookings, travel bookings, and all of that. So that was really, I kind of felt like this is actually going to be impacting on the team members actually handling all those responsibilities. Because imagine you are just sitting on a weekend, you're just trying to cool off or maybe have some good time with your family, and then boom, yeah, it goes. You see an email coming in, or maybe a colleague calling to tell you, oh, please, we need to travel on so and so and so. They all know there's an emergency, we need to do A, B, C, and D. So that is actually impacting on the well-being of team. And one of the things that we try to also reiterate and also try to make sure that we preach is people should always try as much as they can. For some of these travels, I know it could be pre-planned and there's no need for a cause for rush. So we would encourage that stick to the SOP. If there are times where you couldn't stick to that, we would really understand and be able to provide you that help, not having a situation where there's a recurring request that is totally off working hours. So we've experienced that, and then it does impact on the team, but we're also trying to see that we make people try to stick to SOP so that requests could just come during working hours and not just outside of work time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Lawal. I really appreciate that, the way you've connected it to reality, because at the end of the day, what we're experiencing here or discussing is something that people go through on a day-to-day basis. So thank you so much for raising that. Of course, when you're especially in the humanitarian sector, like you rightly said, there's a lot of pressure. And when line managers are not very aware or maybe have not actually discussed what the parameters are in terms of workload, in terms of support, in terms of when people are actually really having a tough time, what are the structures in place to ensure that they're not left behind or just left to their own means until they drop off. So when we talk about high performing or high functioning team, these conversations are always had well in advance so that they have a sort of structure to go with, a sort of process in place to ensure that there are ways and means of supporting teams when they're struggling, when they're tired, when they're exhausted, that line manager are really aware. And even the team members also are empowered to share, like, I'm having a really hard time, or I can't do X, Y, Z. And, just having that conversation can be very helpful in making sure that team members don't burn out. Conflict management is also another pillar that we talk about in the Align and Thrive framework, because when we have people, so just imagine we opened with that quote, right? When we have team members who are coming with different ways of thinking and being, and they're stressed out, you can imagine conflict is just very, very close. It's like the next thing that could just trigger someone, and the next thing you know, you're having a big, fight or exchanging harsh emails. And I think we've all probably at some point had something similar happen, right? So if you have had such a situation or witnessed conflict in a team, can you please put yes in the chat if that's something you've seen before, or thumbs up? So I know that this is something that, okay, Juliet, Osak. So this is something that is so, I've been in the team where I think there was even a lady in my team who literally decided to go on sick leave because she couldn't handle being in the same place with one other team member. So they had to have some kind of mediation to be able to repair that relationship. So it happened. And what I recognize is that when conversations like these are not had, when you don't take the time to actually have a conversation around alignment, how do we work together? Take into consideration this framework I've just shared. When people do not take the time to have these conversations around how do we communicate together, how do we collaborate, how do we make decisions, really setting the expectations around these pillars. When that's not done, you leave the team and the leader up for lots of chaos and just a really bad structure, which leads to demotivation. People end up quitting, or it's just not a good environment. The reverse, though, is when you have these conversations, everybody knows, what's expected. There's no magic to it. You don't need to guess. You know exactly where you stand. And this really helps create the sense of connection with the team. It also allows for people to reach out when there's an issue, when there's a problem, when you have this conversation and this understanding. I'd like to ask a question. What is another mechanism that can be used to ensure or enhance alignment? Can anyone guess? What is something else we can use to ensure alignment? Yes, Chibuzo, Chichi.
So for me, I believe some level of team cohesion. So if that be team away days or using a tool, building a mechanism within the team to bond the team. So team bonding, team cohesion, especially when working across cultures. I think that's another way to ensure that the team is moving the same trajectory.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So team building, team bonding, away retreats. I have a friend of mine who is actually on a retreat right now in Senegal, and they're doing exactly that because that's very, very important to the team. Thank you. Anybody else? What's another mechanism that can help build alignment?
Okay, apart from having proper orientation for new staff members, having continuous improvement where you're having more like maybe just like Chichi said earlier, maybe team awareness Mondays or just days where you talk about you just communicate around how to make the team better. So be it around if they're having challenges, how to just basically having conversations on how to handle conflict and how to handle basic issues and also setting structures within the organization that should be able to address some of these challenges. So having a HR that is also responsive and human, I think these are the things I could think of.
Fantastic. You've all, contributed beautifully to some of the elements that can really support and help alignment. Another one that you could use is feedback, right? Because feedback is another mechanism that you can use as a line manager to check in to make sure that things are actually working out, right? A lot of times, in a team, people are so scared of feedback. When they hear the word feedback, like, oh my gosh, I've done something bad. They're so scared. Not only is the team member scared of the feedback, the line manager too is scared to give the feedback because they're like, oh no, what would they say? If I give this feedback, especially if it's corrective, they'll say, oh, maybe they won't like me, maybe they'll hate me. Oh gosh, people really have anxiety. And what happens is they don't have that conversation until the very end, and then the relationship sours and the team member probably gets fired or the team member leaves. Yes, Lawa, go ahead.
I could think of a number of things that could actually lead to other things that could lead to team alignment, but I'd like to be specific on leadership alignment first. One of the first things I usually used to look out is, where does the leadership sees where the organization is headed to in terms of strategy? If the leadership isn't aligned, there is that tendency that there's going to be a lot of confusion within the team members, and the expectation will be what will now be cascaded down to teams if there are no clear, direct strategies on where the organization is actually headed to. Another thing could be management dashboards or KPIs, just to know, something to be able to show that we could actually gauge and have variable data to actually track metrics in terms of performance. How well am I doing well, or where do we actually need to kind of, improve? If it could be trainings, if it could be, cultural alignment, trying to see that we make sure that we don't just leave the entire team members in the dark, but again, we are trying to make sure that we're able to track our KPIs and then see where we actually need to move from time to time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the energy and the contributions. You're all right. It's extremely important that you have those conversations. Ideally, in an ideal team, these conversations should already be had at the very beginning of the year to set the year in a good path. And when you have an aligned team, then you're able to talk about all these different pillars, which would then feed into the way you engage and work together. And the idea is when you do this, you become a well-functioning team. You become a high-functioning team. But the reality is a lot of people don't have these conversations. I would like to ask you, has anybody ever had this kind of framework introduced, or maybe in a different kind of way, to promote alignment in teams? Has anybody had this experience before? Maybe show of hands, or maybe you can type no if you've never had this before, or you can type yes if you've had it before. If you had a conversation like this with your team. Osak, you said yes. Can you share in what way?
When I was working in a health project, we had the professor, the director of the project, that first started the project by explaining to all the team members what were the goals that we wanted to achieve. And then those goals were like divided by 13 different activities that we had to achieve. And it was really informative for me. I had the image and also the clear explanation to where we are going and how we will go and do to achieve those goals. It was really well explained in the beginning of the project. So it was easy to also track the results because we had different activities really well explained well before the beginning of the project.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, thank you. I'm very happy to hear that, because a lot of times organizations don't have these conversations at the beginning of the year. I don't know. Lawa, did you want to say something? Your hand is up.
My apologies, please. It was from the previous.
Okay. You also had your hand up. You also did a thumbs up. Are you saying that in your organization, you usually have these kinds of sessions at the beginning of the year to kind of bring everyone to alignment?
Yes. We did have one of our strategic meetings earlier this year in, I think, February. And okay, let me just break it down. Last year, our previous CR country director resigned, and then he left somewhere around June. So we had an acting who there was this, lot of rush, activities and all of that. Everybody was just focused on program deliverables and all of that. So when we got to the last year, there was a need for us to actually sit down and actually look at where exactly are we looking at seeing ourselves? Where do we intend to, be more? Where do we have more strength? Where do we have weakness? And what are the things that what are potential opportunities for business development? Where are the places where we would need to leverage opportunities within the respective programs happening in the organization? So earlier this year, one of the things we did was to have a strategy workshop. And in that workshop, a workshop that lasted for 3 days, where there were a lot of not so many, so to say, but there were very specific agendas to see that we're able to, number one, try to align the organizational global objective to its local objective, that's in country in Nigeria here. And two, we're also looking at cultural alignment. This was something that came up pretty strongly, because when I actually assumed my role as the HR focal point for the organization last year, one of the things that I come to realize that the organization was struggling with was trying to understand what are their policies, their procedures, just like you mentioned, not just having those policies on paper, but seeing that people are aligned to the expectation of what those SOPs were. So there were a lot of, sensitization on trainings in terms of setting policies that were aligned with the global strategic objectives that we're also replicating in country. Then lastly, I think, was for business development. We're also looking at considering the cuts in US grant funding cuts. What are other potential opportunities that we could actually leverage from, other programs or other organizations, or, looking at ways to see how we'll be able to get other business opportunities that we could actually leverage on, and just shifting focus from the US grant funding cuts to other potential, business development. So literally, this was one of the things we did earlier this year, and it has helped set tone in terms of where we're headed, what we're expecting in terms of cultural alignment, and also other business development opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sunny. And so I'm guessing in that conversation, you all also talked about how each person will contribute to achieving those goals, right? Did you also talk about the how?
Yes, that was actually factored too.
Fantastic. Yeah, great. So in essence, the team alignment coaching program is really centered on supporting leaders who may not have had this conversation. And so I can just quickly share with you what that would look like, in general. what's usually very important here is to build the team agreement, that is to build the team norms. And it may sound very simple, like, oh, well, a team norm, what's the big deal? We'll sit down and determine what we want to say. But the thing is, it's extremely important that people have something that binds them as a team. And so what I normally do is to start with an assessment of where the team actually is. So it's kind of like a needs assessment of the team in terms of the 6 pillars I shared earlier. And having that then helps us establish the scope or the context of that session. I was in a workshop where I ran this, and this team just needed to talk about communication. That was where they struggled. They struggled in terms of regular things such as emailing, for example. If people were really upset that they would send emails and they wouldn't get a response even in 48 hours, which is very frustrating. So a lot of times that could be the weak spot. The communication is a huge problem, right? Sometimes it's decision making. So here we would be able to determine, okay, where are the real pain points? What do we need to focus on? And based on that, I always, of course, ask people organizations to have a facilitator to kind of facilitate the conversation, because if it's the line manager running this workshop, it might be a bit difficult because of people might not feel safe to share. So the value added of having a facilitator is that they're able to create a safe space and then, of course, enable teams to generate these team norms in terms of how they're going to react and work together. Because ultimately, the goal of a team agreement is that you want them to work. And then, of course, finally, when you've identified the norms, and it's to determine how do we commit to it and how often do we need to meet. And then, you don't want to have this team norm designed and then chucked somewhere and forgotten, which also has a potential to happen if you're not intentional about how you want to follow through. And so with my coaching program, I provide this kind of support to teams. And normally like I mentioned earlier, normally what I do is to have this assessment program, and then, of course, support teams to co-create their agreement. And then also one of the major problems or challenges people have is they go through a workshop and then there's no follow-up. And so I provide one quarterly coaching session to make sure that things are actually in place. And if there's a need for more support, of course, that can also be discussed. So this is something that I do, and I wanted to share with you. And I just would love to hear, is this something that you think it could be beneficial to you? What do you think about this, about the idea of having a team agreement for teams, especially teams that are struggling, for example, or underperforming? Are there any questions?
I wanted to say that when the team has the correct information about where we are going, it's more effort to work together, for team members to work together. They know what they have to do and how they have to collaborate together. And they know that they have also the feedback, the good feedback from their leader, their managers. So it's always a good idea to prepare the team members before, to provide the goals, the different goals that we want to achieve well before, and especially to establish those norms that you explained to us earlier. It helps to have I don't know if it's cohesion of the team, really important.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Osak. Any other reflections regarding the idea of team alignment? Anything that you found striking, interesting? I'd love to hear your feedback. Is this something that you think you could use in your organization, for example?
Well, I do think that this is something that is incredibly important in every space where there's one or more people working collaboratively. It is like the elephant in the room that is not being talked about, is not being addressed, is not being brought to the fore. But I've worked in really big organizations, and I have seen the lack of cohesion and alignment, and I can see how it really does cost the organization, even if it's just in more days off work, because due to stress and due to exhaustion and overwhelm, that has an impact on the overall revenue the organization is generating at the end of the year. So I think it is so important, and the way you've curated it is very clear, concise, and easy to assimilate. I think it's important for every space to adopt this model, and just want to say well done. I've really enjoyed the session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Any other insights?
I just wanted to talk. One of my biggest takebacks for today was the feedback aspect of the conversation, which for me is the hardest, especially as a line manager. Sometimes you're working with adults, they become your friends, and you are that space where you sometimes, and it's really important, because at the end of the day, if you're not giving the right feedback, then it kind of trickles down back to you. Because I mean, if the work is not getting done, you find yourself, I found myself in that space where I'm trying to cover for everybody, and I'm also stressed, and I don't know how to give that feedback. So I've also been in that space. And I really think that, the feedback part of it is the hardest. And feedback as a concept of it, or it's something that is really big, because you need feedback to go forward. So the culture towards feedback is a very big conversation. The culture, both on the part of the line manager and the part of the subordinate, is such an important, very, very important, because it can make and mar relationships, not just relationships, the organization as a whole. So just the fear, the big takeaway for me, the fear of that feedback. People don't want to give the right feedback, and people are not also willing to take feedback. So you see, it's a two-way thing. So on the person that is taking it is like, oh, why will you say I didn't do these things well? So that mutual understanding to say, okay, this is my view. I'm the one managing you. This is my view of you. Okay, since this is your view of me, I'm going to try to cover that part of me. So these are very, very, very important. So this is my big takeaway. And I would really love to learn more about feedback, how to ensure that it is not catastrophic.
Yeah.
I mean, that's I'm really looking forward to, if we're going to have like a very closing session of just that feedback. I'm really interested. Thank you so much. And this
Absolutely.
was amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you so much, Julia. Absolutely. And the reason why I talked about feedback is because it's very much linked to how aligned the team is. An aligned team will talk about communication, and the line manager will talk about their intentions around feedback, because it is a well-known performance management tool to support teams, right? A line manager's role is to support the team, to help them do well, to help them succeed. And so when line managers skip this conversation, team members may have a completely different understanding of what the feedback is about, or even the methodology of the feedback, right? So sometimes, like I said earlier, some line managers are really scared to give feedback, and team members are afraid of it. Well, because there's a misconception about it. So yes, the second session I'm going to be running is about feedback. And of course, I have an app also called Feedback Yes, that helps support line managers. So I'm happy to run another webinar, and I'll definitely invite you as well. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to be wrapping up this session. Thank you so much all for being here. I do want to ask one question. My question is, what is one insight, one idea, or perspective that you heard today that you're going to try to maybe share with somebody else?
So for me, my biggest takeaway today, of course, was the conversation around basically the quote at the beginning of this conversation, which really talked about how important it is. So definitely for me, it's the whole of it. That quote that talks about definitely things will be dysfunctional. I just see that this is something that, because people will come to you. I would go to my friends and be like, oh, look at the challenge I'm having. These people don't get it this way. And that is how people also come to me and say, like, these people don't get it this way. My team is doing this. So definitely, this is what I'm going to carry along to say, hey, definitely the teams are going to be dysfunctional, because, you have all these people from different spaces. So you have to be intentional about team alignment. So definitely that's the message I'm taking from today.
Thank you. Thank you, Julia. That's powerful. Anybody else want to share?
Yes, I would like to share to other team members or people I know that are in a team that it's important to set a context first, to reflect what is the current status, the points that we need to maybe improve, and to generate norms based on that. it really struck me, because sometimes we start in the beginning of any activity, a project or anything, but we don't reflect on the way to the goal we want to achieve, and we don't generate norms to establish any guideline to correct what is the problem right now and go on after that. So this is really something that I really appreciate, and I want to thank you, Amara, for this presentation and this conversation about alignment. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you so much. And Sunny also, I mean, Lawa also says, thank you. And Lawa also says, I took away a great deal from the session and found it highly insightful. Thank you so much for sharing that, Lawa. Thank you. So I have put together a quick contact sheet. So if you know, I'd like you to fill it out, because there's some questions, some feedback questions that I would love to hear from you, because it helps also with, you know, in terms of the content that I share. And yeah, and then also, you know, if you'd like support regarding team alignment in your organizations, for example, you know, then you can fill in the forms, and then we can establish or you know, determine a date to have a discovery call to learn more about the program and how it can be of support. So if you let me know if you can see the maybe I'll pin it. So you have the forms. Do you have access to it? Can you see it?
Yes, yes,
It's
I
very
saw it.
quick.
I have access
Yeah,
to it.
it's very
Yes.
quick. Just take a moment. I'll give you maybe 2 minutes to quickly fill it out, and then we'll wrap up for the day. Thank you so much. Any other
Okay.
thoughts that anyone wants to share before we wrap up? We have about 5 more minutes. So just thumbs up if you're already done with the form, and then I can wrap up. Okay. Everybody done? Lawal, are you done? Thank you.
I send the form. Thank you so
Okay.
much, Amara.
Thank you so much, Isak. Thank you.
So thank you, Amara. It was such an interesting session, and I'm looking forward to the next. And
The
hopefully,
feedback session. Thank
I'm
you.
really looking forward to having my team have this conversation. It's really going to be a dream come true for me. So I'm really looking forward to that too.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right. So with that, I believe we're all done, perhaps. Well, Lawal, thumbs up if you're good to go. No pressure, though. No, but we do have 2 minutes left. And thank you for the hearts, Osak. Fantastic. Okay. So I want to just say thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedules. A whole hour. That's a lot. And I really appreciate you staying all the way to the end, and also for your contributions throughout the session. And I very much look forward to seeing you again, perhaps in another webinar that I will run. Thank you so much for your time, and have a most beautiful rest of the day. Thank you. Until next
Thank
time,
you so
be well.
much.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Bye
bye,
for now.
everyone. Bye.
Thank
Bye,
you,
everyone. Bye,
Amara.
Amatu. Well done. This was amazing.
Well done. Congratulations. Well done. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.